A brief history of quorum breaks in Texas politics. The act of denying quorum has been a significant aspect of Texas politics since the year 1870. In June of that year, a group of 13 Texas senators made a bold move by walking out of the Capitol in an effort to obstruct a bill that aims to grant the governor wartime powers. This action effectively deprived the Senate of the two-thirds quorum necessary for voting. Although the senators who left were subsequently arrested and the bill was ultimately passed, this event, known as the Rump Senate incident, set a precedent for quorum breaking as a strategic maneuver employed by minority parties in Texas politics, a tactic that continues to this day. Fast forward to recent years, and we see Texas House Democrats once again resorting to this drastic measure. Following notable quorum breaks in 1979, 2003, and 2021, they fled the state on a Sunday to prevent the passage of a congressional redistricting map that would allocate 5 additional seats to Republicans in the U.S. House. Political analysts suggest that, unless the Democratic delegation shows remarkable endurance, this latest attempt may serve more as a symbolic gesture rather than a practical solution to halt redistricting efforts. Brandon Rottinghouse, a political science professor at the University of Houston, describes this action as a messaging move, indicating that it represents a last-ditch effort for Democrats who feel they have exhausted all legislative and legal avenues. A brief history of quorum breaks in Texas. The 1979 quorum break, famously known as the Killer Bees incident, was the last successful effort that achieved its immediate goals. During this event, 12 Democratic state senators left the Capitol for 4 days to block a proposal that would have altered the timing of the Texas presidential primary to favor former Governor John Connally's campaign. The senators managed to hold out in a garage apartment in Austin until Republican leaders agreed to withdraw the contentious bill. In 2003, another quorum break occurred in response to a mid-decade redistricting initiative. This time, House Democrats fled to Ardmore, Oklahoma, where they remained until the regular legislative session concluded. However, when former Governor Rick Perry called for a special session, 11 Democratic senators took their protest to Albuquerque, New Mexico, where they stayed for 46 days. Their absence continued until Senator John Whitmire, a Democrat from Houston, returned to Texas, allowing the Senate to achieve a quorum and pass the redistricting legislation. The 2021 quorum break aimed to thwart restrictive voting measures, but ultimately fell apart after 6 weeks due to internal divisions among Democrats. Initially, they maintained unity during their time in Washington, D.C., but disagreements surfaced during the second special session. The effort concluded when 3 Houston Democrats returned, citing concerns over the COVID-19 pandemic, which restored the quorum necessary for the controversial legislation to pass. The reality of a quorum break. While Democrats technically have the ability to obstruct the GOP's redistricting plans by breaking quorum, this would necessitate the entire delegation remaining outside of Texas until at least November. Political scientists express skepticism about this possibility, given historical patterns. Mark P. Jones, a political science professor at Rice University, explains, if we are to adhere to our current primary schedule, it is essential that these districts receive legislative approval before the filing period for the 2026 midterms opens in November. A significant challenge for Democrats is that Governor Greg Abbott has the authority to call unlimited special sessions, each lasting up to 30 days. If the Democrats break quorum during the ongoing special session, which is set to continue through late August, Abbott could immediately call for another session the very next day, perpetuating the cycle indefinitely. Even if Democrats manage to stay out of Texas until the November filing deadline, Republicans could potentially hold a second round of primaries for the 2026 midterms. John Taylor, a political science professor at the University of Texas at San Antonio, recalls a similar situation in 1996 when congressional districts in Texas were redrawn in violation of the Voting Rights Act, necessitating a second round of primaries. History indicates that the logistical challenges of living out of state, away from their families and regular jobs, while it is feasible to sustain this for one special session, managing it for a second is a stretch. Attempting a third would be unprecedented. Additionally, the practicalities of housing a large group of people out of state pose significant challenges. The 2003 quorum break, which was driven by another redistricting dispute, was described as a bare-bones operation, requiring the legislators to establish a makeshift command center in Oklahoma under less than ideal conditions. To restore a quorum and allow votes to proceed, only 12 of the 62 House Democrats who have reportedly left the state need to return. While Democrats can attract national media attention, such coverage tends to diminish quickly. The novelty and the national media spotlight will likely fade within a week or two, Jones warns. It is challenging to keep a story in the public eye for more than a week, especially when there are no new developments. What penalties do Democrats face? New House rules implemented in 2023 impose a fine of $500 per day on lawmakers who leave the state, and they specify that campaign funds cannot be used to cover these penalties. However, Texas ethics laws offer several loopholes. Under Texas ethics regulations, it is relatively straightforward for an organization to compensate these legislators, allowing them to use that money to pay the fines. Jones explains. For instance, if Mark Cuban decided to pay all these House Democrats $1,000 a day as consultants, they could utilize those funds to cover the fines. Recently, the Texas Tribune reported that Democrats have begun fundraising efforts in anticipation of a potential quorum break. During the 2021 quorum break, a group backed by Beto O'Rourke provided $600,000 to support Texas House Democrats during their time in Washington, D.C. The legislators are also expected to contest the fines in court, which could delay the financial repercussions of their actions. Several have indicated that these fines infringe upon their civil liberties, Jones noted, highlighting that former House member and current Representative Jasmine Crockett has been vocal about pursuing legal challenges. Can Republicans compel Democrats to return? Attorney General Ken Paxton has vowed that his office will assist in hunting down and compelling the attendance of any Democrat who leaves the state. However, political scientists assert that there is no direct mechanism for Republicans to force the return. They even used federal resources to track planes suspected of carrying members who had fled. Rottinghouse recalls from the 2003 incident. The difficulty of tracking down missing legislators was dramatically illustrated during the 1979 Killer Bees episode, when a dozen Democratic state senators concealed themselves in Austin to obstruct changes to the primary election date. Then Lieutenant Governor William P. Hobby Jr. dispatched Texas Rangers and state troopers to locate them, resulting in a prolonged game of hide and seek. They were eventually discovered due to an enterprising reporter who followed a tip and confronted one of the state senators taking out the trash, Taylor recounted. However, Republicans may find that their most effective strategies are political rather than legal. They can exert pressure on Democrats by arguing that other critical legislation, such as emergency aid for recent flooding in the Hill Country and regulations on consumable hemp, is being jeopardized by the walkout. State Republicans might argue that the future of the STAR test, THC regulation, or funding for recent disasters is all at risk because Democrats have abandoned their posts, Rottinghouse suggested. Republicans could also consider more aggressive tactics, such as reducing the $20,000 monthly operating budgets allocated to House members for their office operations, or declaring the seats vacant, which would trigger special elections. Rottinghouse notes that the latter option has never been utilized. even during the most contentious quorum breaks in the past. For some legislators, this drastic measure is already on the table. In a letter sent to the Republican caucus on July 30th, Representative Brent Money, R. Greenville, stated, "Should members flee the state for an extended period, the governor has the constitutional authority to declare their seats vacant." The Texas Tribune Festival is rapidly expanding its lineup. Join us in downtown Austin from November 13 to 15, where prominent leaders, innovators, and newsmakers will take the stage. Recent additions include comedian, actor, and writer John Mulaney, Dallas Mayor Eric Johnson, U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar, D. Minnesota, New York media editor-at-large Kara Swisher, and U.S. Representative Veronica Escobar, D. El Paso. Secure your tickets today. TridFest 2025 is proudly presented by J.P. Morgan Chase. Correction. August 3, 2025, at 8:01 p.m. A previous version of this story incorrectly stated that Bill Hobby was the lieutenant governor during the 1979 quorum break by state Senate Democrats. Illinois Governor Pritzker protects Texas Democrats amid arrest threats. In a bold move, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker has pledged to protect the Democratic members of the Texas House of Representatives who fled their state to block Republican efforts at redrawing congressional maps. "We're going to do everything we can to protect every single one of them," Pritzker stated at a press conference. This comes after Texas Governor Greg Abbott threatened to expel the Democrats if they don't return by Monday. But here's where it gets controversial. Pritzker called the Democrats' actions a righteous act of courage, saying they had no choice but to leave and protect their constituents. Do you agree with Pritzker's stance, or do you think the Texas Democrats should face consequences for their actions? Let us know in the comments.